Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blind Buys, a podcast where we watch and discuss movies we've bought sight unseen. I'm Josh, and with me, as always, is my collector in crime, Jesse.
Hey, and thanks for joining us for our ninth episode where we'll be covering my pick, Agnes Varda's 1977 film, One Sings, the Other Doesn't. And that'll be at the bottom of the hour, but, it's been a few weeks. Life happens, things happen, and we missed last week, so we've got maybe another extra week's worth of potential watches to cover. So, Josh, what have you been up to? What have you been watching recently?
All right, well, I finally got around to watching Enemy Territory, which was covered by our friends on the Bat and Spider podcast pretty recently. I had a great time with this one. It was the perfect, like, turn your brain off, Saturday morning movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I know Arrow has I think it's a Region B Blu-ray of this, but I'm thinking about adding it to my collection because it was just really a fun time. Like surprisingly well made, a lot of good action, and also just like a quintessential Tony Todd performance. I feel like he can play a villain like no one else can because like he brings like the kookiness and the campiness to it, but also it's menacing like of his voice and his like just physical presence, and so it's a really great performance, and I really enjoyed that movie overall. You checked out that one too, right?
I did, and yeah, he was definitely did a lot to raise the experience of watching that movie, as he always does. I mean, he's just so great. He was such a pro. It was so really sad to have lost him last year. But it's a pretty fun. Otherwise, it's a pretty fun, really kind of gritty genre exploitation exercise. It's got its problems, but I mean, Tony Todd and just the general kind of like batshit nature of certain things that happen in that movie move things along for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, really enjoyed that. And I got to hang out with some of the Bat and Spider folks in their Discord as well for a watch party that they did way back on April 18th. They were having a 300th episode watch party celebration, and so they went for, an entire day of watch parties. So I kind of jumped in at the end when I could, and I got to watch Empire of the Dark, Steve
Nice.
Barkett's movie, which I had never seen before, but is huge with people in that circle. And what to say about this movie other than just like it kind of blew my mind. It's a nice reminder that like every once in a while movies will appear where where you can tell the people that made them were just so insanely dedicated to getting this just strangely specific vision like out on screen, like they're kind of like exercising something, like they have this story to tell and they're going to tell it however they can. And that's definitely the vibe that I get from Steve Barkett's work. We also watched the aftermath after Empire of the Dark. I just had a lot of fun, and he seems like a very interesting filmmaker and creative, so I want to find more stuff that he's done.
I think that's pretty much it in terms of features. It's really that's what he did, but I think there's some other stuff knocking around from Steve Barkett, and I mean, the Bat and Spider guys, they cultivated, I mean, because of their obsession with him, they cultivated a relationship with his daughter. She was in for a watch party with them some months ago. So yeah, the effects that they were able to pull off for Empire of the Dark are honestly kind of impressive for like the level that they were working at from what I remember. But yeah, those are fun movies and a fun just kind of like odd niche that we've found ourselves in over in the Bat and Spider Discord with those ones.
Yeah. The music too is really great in Empire of the Dark. It feels a lot like a John Williams ripoff, but it's very rousing, and it weirdly fits with like all the like the satanic cult stuff that's going on with this movie. Like despite all of that, it works really well. So yeah, that was great. I know we talked a little bit previously on this show about John Waters too, because Criterion announced a couple of his other features being released by them soon. I think Hairspray and Desperate Living. So I finally got around to a couple of his really early Dreamland productions. Most of the stuff that I had seen of his was, later work, but I got to check out Multiple Maniacs and Pink Flamingos for the first time, both of them. Multiple Maniacs I had the Criterion Blu-ray for, but I had to hunt down Pink Flamingos. Ended up watching it on the Internet Archive. Don't tell anybody. But they were both really, really fun watches. I had to make sure that like no one else was coming in and out of
Oh
the
yeah.
like living room TV area when those were on. So ended up watching them across multiple nights. I ended up liking Multiple Maniacs a bit more than Pink Flamingos.
Multiple Maniacs was the first. That was I think that was a that was a, I think that was a blind buy for me, and the first of his kind of dreamland movies that I had seen, and I was just instantly an instant convert. I think in no small part because watching The Little Mermaid loads of times as a kid really imprinted Divine on me
Hmm.
from an extremely young age, because it's like the people who created Ursula just that's they took a picture of Divine and they animated it to look like an octopus, and that's who that is. And I couldn't believe it. I was gobsmacked. So yeah, I love his work, and the people, the weird family that he created to make those movies with. He just so clearly loved them.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're strange, they're messed up, but they're oddly comforting. Even the really outrageous ones.
Yeah, it's so strange that I'm able to feel so like immersed in these worlds that he's creating because you're watching a group of people just getting together to make something that I don't know if they know how it's going to turn out, but it's become a classic for us, and so I really enjoy getting into those. I think they're both a little shaggy in places, but every time Divine is on screen, it's just lights out.
Yeah,
No one did
yeah.
it better than Divine.
Well, and I think once you know what his influences were, like these sort of like really like teen films from the 50s, melodramas, surf movies, that like beach blanket type movies that were, if you watch those, you can totally see the style that he told those actors to do something very specific, and they did it. So it's very heightened in a way
Yeah.
that is intentional, and there are bad versions of that are unwatchable, but like watching them do it is like just, to me, endlessly funny to watch them kind
Yeah.
of like scream at each other and do these things that are almost like happenings. Like it's hard to tell whether some of the things were like how many of these people that were in the background knew that a movie was being filmed, which is pretty
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, you have to wonder, like, especially towards the end of Multiple Maniacs, where Divine is just rampaging down the street.
Oh yeah.
Like, you have to wonder how much of that was, how many of those people knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But
Great stuff.
yeah, really awesome. I did a little double feature of pre-code films, both starring Miriam Hopkins. These were blind buys that I had of Criterion discs. First was Designed for Living, and then secondly, I watched Trouble in Paradise. And I believe both of these were directed by Ernst Lubitsch.
Yeah, those are two of our
Yeah.
friend Guti's absolute favorites. I need to check those out. I really need to get on those.
Yeah, I had so much fun with these, especially Designed for Living, which has some of the most potent like chemistry between the three leads. It's a love triangle, two guys and a girl, but like the chemistry goes all the ways, and it's just like you can't take your eyes off the screen when you're watching these three people interact. I said in my review that the Miriam Hopkins character, her name is Gilda. She walked so Tashi Duncan could run. That's all I really have to say about the movie because I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's just fantastic. In Trouble in Paradise, Miriam Hopkins is playing not necessarily a villain, but someone who is like opposed to several of the characters in the film. She she has this like on-screen presence that is like witty and flirty, but can stand up to the banter with the quote unquote guys. And she's just delightful. I loved watching her in both of these films. So I want to check out more of what she's done for sure. But I really enjoyed those two, and those come from Criterion.
Yeah, and is that part of the there's a whole Lubitsch box set, right? Is that, or those, I don't, but I don't know if either of those are in there, but I'm pretty sure Criterion put out a box of his stuff, of Lubitsch
Yeah, I think pretty
musicals.
recently they
Yeah,
put out a couple of his musicals.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of those yet either. I'm not sure how many Lubitsch movies I've seen, if any. But
Yeah. Oh, I did make it out to the movie theater for the first time
yeah,
since our daughter was born.
it's big deal.
Yeah, it was great. We had childcare for the night, so we My wife and I went out to go see The Devil Wears Prada 2 in theaters, and it was just a delightful time. This movie did not need to be made by any stretch of the imagination, but I obviously understand like the financial reasons why this movie had to be made. Probably studios are always clamoring for IP to reclaim. So for what it's worth, I think this was an excellent sequel. It does a lot of the, hey, remember this, but it's not always in a condescending way, which I appreciated. And a lot of the character beats really felt earned, especially after a 20-year gap from the first movie. It made sense where a lot of them ended up, and it was just a fun time at the movies. And what more do you want when you're out for the first time celebrating 3 months of parenthood? I just wanted to kick back and relax, and
Amazing.
that was the
Yeah.
perfect one.
Amazing.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I also got out to see a new Anne Hathaway movie in the theater, but it was the other one. It was Mother Mary, David Lowery's Mother Mary. But Devil Wears Prada 2 could well be our next date night. But I need to catch up with the first one. I've never seen it. But yeah, Mother Mary, I really liked it. It was I've been ranking my 2026 watches as I go for the first time this year, and I slotted Mother Mary just ahead, I believe, of Project Hail Mary, because I don't know.
Oh, wow.
To me, and I liked Project Hail Mary a lot, but to me, it's easy for me to envision if someone came and gave me a book like Project Hail Mary and said, make a good movie out about this. It might be hard to execute, but it would be easy to envision what you have to do, right? You got spaceships, you got aliens, you got a crisis. But if someone gave me the outline of a story like Mother Mary, not that, I mean, David Lowery wrote it himself, but if you had an idea of like a pop star needs a dress, like how do you make that interesting? And she's going to talk to her friend about the dress. How do you make that visually interesting? I would have no idea. So to me, like off the rip, just this movie kind of gets a lot of points for how he decided to stage it and just how inventive he got with that. There's some sequences in the movie that just had my jaw was on the floor with what he was doing, like these sort of phantasmagoric visions of things that had happened in the past and the way they sort of mixed with the present of these two women having a conversation, because the most of the movie is just two women having a talk in this old building where it's the dressmakers. Anne Hathaway is playing a pop star. Her friend's a dressmaker who basically was very instrumental in her rise to fame as this sort of like Gaga-esque pop star. But they had a falling out anyway. But yeah, it was just the central performances from Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole. It's basically it's mostly a two-hander between the two of them. They were just both very captivating in their own ways. So yeah, I was glad to get out to see that on a big screen, because I think it's one that a lot of people might think they could skip. But just the visuals that Lowery brought to the screen, like it was to be enveloped in a theater and to be in the space with them, felt like absolutely the right way to watch it. So that was really cool. I really like Mother Mary. I've gotten a few watches with my kids recently, which is fun. Them being of the age where I can watch stuff with them and not just like kind of holding them while I'm trying to get them to go to sleep and watching a movie, which I did plenty of that when they were babies. But my son and I saw the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which don't think I really need to talk about too much. Not really a movie for me, but he had a great time. But then he wanted to watch Clue because he had seen a production of it at at the school where my wife works, and he was interested in watching Clue. So we watched that, and we both had a good time. I mean, he didn't get many of the jokes. He obviously did not understand. Many of the jokes centering around Colleen Camp and the things that her costume does in that film, went right over his head. But I mean, just the sort of the patter, the way that all the silly things that the characters are doing and how fast they, toward the end when they're running back and forth, he just had a great time with it. So I'm excited that he sort of saw that at a young age, and hopefully it'll be one that he comes back to again, when he's a teenager, and a lot more kind of light bulbs go off for him with a lot of the other jokes, not just the entendres and stuff, but just a lot of the other, there's so many funny things in the
Yeah.
dialogue, like puns and things that you could miss even the first time you watch it as an adult. So that was a
Hmm.
lot of fun. And then the other day, we all three of us, my son and my 3-year-old, we watched My Neighbor Totoro,
Oh,
which
nice.
yeah. So that was I think I had shown my 7-year-old Kiki's Delivery Service a few years ago, which he thought was fine, but he wasn't captivated by it. But Totoro really got both of them, so that was really cool to see them get into some like non-Disney animation that's just kind of done in a completely different register in many ways. I think just all the
Yeah.
different like pauses and how kind of calm a lot of it is. But once Totoro showed up, they were definitely both super locked in. So that was really wonderful.
Nice. Did you guys watch that at home, or did you get a chance to see that out at the theaters?
That was at home. I know that a lot of Miyazaki's have seemed to be getting re-releases these days, but that was at home
Hmm.
on a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And then some other things. I caught up with Bulworth, the 1998 film starring and directed by one Warren Beatty. A very sort
Hmm.
of strange and outrageous political comedy of sorts, where Warren Beatty plays this California senator who is kind of disillusioned and is trying to get reelected, but is kind of not really happy with the political tack he has to take because of what his party's doing. And he ends up basically appropriating hip hop culture once he get it's it was sort of a notorious movie in its day. It's hard to explain if you weren't kind of there for it
This
at the
poster
time.
is insane.
Yes.
What is happening?
That is Warren Beatty wearing an outfit that he acquires from some young people living in South Central Los Angeles, and yeah, he starts rapping at one of his events. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's basically a dark political satire that didn't make a that I think was kind of misunderstood in its day, but I think had a lot of interesting things to say about the political culture of the '90s, the late '90s, in sort of the late Clinton era, but perhaps most notably spawned the single Ghetto Superstar from Praz of the Fugees and Old Dirty Bastard, which was all over the radio at the time. So it was fun to go back and catch up with that. It's going to be covered by Unclear and Present Danger, Jamel Bowie's political thrillers podcast. So it was a good excuse to catch up with that. So that was fun. What
I'm adding
else?
this to the watch list right now
Yeah,
because
it's something.
I've
Kind
got to see this.
Yeah, it's only on DVD. I think it feels like something Justin Liberty would want to pick up at some point. I don't know if it's a
Oh yeah.
cinematograph movie, but I could see a Vinegar Syndrome release of that potentially. And I guess the last thing I'll bring up is I did one more round of VHS tapes from Scarecrow from their
Nice.
Vestron video section. Good pickup from the VHS section was this movie Witchfire from 1986 starring Shelley Winters as this an escapee from a mental institution
Huh.
who ends up going back to her childhood home with a couple of women who escape with her, and it sort of goes down these sort of kind of like folk horror directions and it was really I mean Shelley Winters just kind of fully committed to what she was doing, and I kind of was getting Spider Baby vibes from the movie. I don't know if you've seen that one, but Spider Baby is an excellent movie from an exploitation movie from the 1960s, but definitely like folk horror, kind of like House of Psychotic Women type stuff going
Yeah.
on. And I think something like 5 people had reviewed it on Letterboxd before, so super underseen, and another one that feels like it's just waiting to be rediscovered. Not the most amazing movie by any means, but super interesting. It's a Shelley Winters film. It just feels like more people should see it, and I think it's only available on VHS or VHS rips. So, yeah,
Wow.
grateful to have seen that one.
Yeah, this is great. I have got to get a VHS player because I feel like I'm missing out on so much stuff that you can't find anywhere else. Like I was even thinking about the other day, like getting one of those old, like a 13-inch CRT or whatever with the built-in VHS, and just picking up like old kids movies and things like that. And yeah, I don't have room for it, but I would love to.
Yep. Well, if you the converter in my I use a converter, an HDMI converter to hook it up to my 4K television, and it works pretty well. The video quality I would say is honestly at least as good as whatever it's going to look like on your CRT, if you have
Hmm.
one, and you'll be able to sit back a little bit further, and you don't have an extra piece of machinery next to everything else in your house. Yeah, we have a small house too, so yeah, this the combo probably wouldn't work here for us very well.
Yeah, I guess it's like it's really more of the vibe that I'm after, I guess.
Oh, I
And
totally get
no,
it. Yeah.
like knowing that, I'm like, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna pick up one of these TVs on Facebook Marketplace. I'm gonna use it like maybe twice, and then I'll be like, oh wait, actually watching a movie on a VHS tape on a CRT is not the way to go. So that's probably what would happen.
Yeah.
So I'll be okay.
You'll be able to resell it. They're in demand.
That's true. That's true.
Want to talk some announcements?
Yeah, sure.
Coming soon to own on video and DVD.
As happened last episode, we're going to stick with our updated segment called Coming Soon to Own. We're just going to talk about 3 or 4 each of recent announcements that have piqued our interest or that we plan on picking up. Jesse, why don't you go first?
Well, those crazy bastards at Severin just keep finding veins of cinema that I didn't even know existed, didn't know I wanted, and showing me something incredible that I probably shouldn't get. This time, it's Disco Italiana. It is a collection of 4 films that are basically Saturday Night Fever exploitation films. It's Italian disco films. Which
I love
isn't,
this.
Yeah, which isn't so crazy if you think about it. I mean, Giorgio Moroder, one of the pioneers of disco music, so in a way it's sort of like disco music coming back to one of its several homes. But yeah, what do we got? We got American Fever, Grease Rock, Music Machine, and something called John Travolta, The Face with 2 Left Feet.
This is the one that I'm the
I
most
mean,
interested in.
yeah, John Travolta, just incredible.
With a title like that, you have to imagine that this is the best movie ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even read. I didn't even read what these movies are about. I mean, one of them it sounds like is a very direct clone of Saturday Night Fever, like American Fever, unsurprisingly, I guess.
Yeah.
But the trailer that they put together for social media just looks amazing. The outfits, the disco balls, the lights. I'm very intrigued. I'll definitely at least try to check these out. Maybe once the discs hit Scarecrow, or if I'm sure they're floating around on Tubi. And of course, in grand Severin fashion, they have a crazy bundle that's too much money that includes this John Travolta, like, tumbler glass and a 450-page book that I think is just about disco in general, not about this. I don't know if you could write 450 pages about Italian disco exploitation films, but yeah, Disco Mania, a 450-page book. Yeah, I mean, Severin, they know how to do it.
This book is they say it's ostensibly a detailed rundown of the top 100 disco movies of all time, but it's also a glorious autobiographical celebration of disco punk and a trailblazing career in the genre arena. So I'm sure they could turn all of that into 450 pages of content.
So yeah, that just looks tremendous. I'm glad it's one of those things that even if I don't pick it up, I'm glad it exists. Glad they're bringing these things to my attention.
Yeah.
Next up, I made note of Imprint is putting out a volume 1 of The Cinema of King Hu, which I thought is notable because I love King Hu's movies, the ones that I've seen, like Dragon Inn especially, and Come Drink With Me, both of which have boutique releases stateside. Oh, A Touch of Zen is also in here. But then there's a few more that I've never heard of. The Fate of Lee Khan, Four Moods, and Sons of Good Earth. So yeah, King Hu's movies, just the way he directs these sort of pre Shaw Brothers, like martial arts films, these wuxia films. It's definitely different from the Shaw Brothers stuff. So I'm excited to see some of these brought into HD, and it's interesting the way I feel like Imprint does this sometimes. Like some of these are 4K, like the ones that have already received Blu-rays over here, at least, like Come Drink With Me, Dragon Inn, and a touch of Zen or 4K, but the others are Blu-ray. So they mix up the formats in their boxes sometimes, which is
Yeah, they did
interesting.
this with the was it the David Lynch box set that they put out
I
recently?
think so, yeah. And which
Yeah.
frustrates some people, but I'm sure it just comes down to licensing and what they were able to get.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I'll pick this up again because I don't get too much imprint stuff because I feel like a lot of it ends up getting released here by other
Hmm.
labels. But I'm glad that these other films of his are coming out because he's definitely someone who I've wanted to check out more of.
Yeah.
Couple more. I mean, Falling Down, the Getting an Arrow 4K, a movie that I saw entirely too young because my dad was interested in it, and which received a lot of play recently in the amongst the 70 millimeter community. I'll probably pick that up just because I have sort of I think it's a fascinating Michael Douglas performance and a kind of a transgressive film in its way that perhaps says more than it intended to say about the time in which it was made. I think about what angry white men were up to in the 90s and continue to be. And then the last one I'll note is just not a release because it's only sort of news about a restoration that's coming, but it's one that is really, I mean, if this gets released as a boutique release, it's going to be, I mean, what many people might say is the release of the decade, but Ken Russell's The Devils is getting a 4K restoration that's going to premiere at Cannes. That's the word. And this is one that's long been unavailable in its uncut form, also known as the so-called Rape of Christ cut, for a really, I mean, the whole much of the movie is incendiary, but the part that really got cut out of almost any release that you can find in most places, except on there's a rip of it I'm sure floating around on the internet, but there's a DVD, an old DVD that I rented from Scarecrow, has this Rape of Christ cut, which refers to a scene that happens in a church with like hundreds of people doing things to like a crucifix and to each other. And
Pulled straight out of Multiple Maniacs.
yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I'm sure this is probably one of John Waters' favorite movies. But yeah, The Devils, even any cut you can see is pretty amazing. But if they manage to get this out in 4K, it'll be amazing because the production design is astounding. I remember at the time watching the DVD, I was frustrated that I couldn't see more of the details just of these crazy sets that they built. So yeah, if this indeed comes to pass, it's gonna be like like release of the year territory. So we'll see who ends up getting it. I don't know if Warner would hold on to it themselves or if they would give it to somebody else. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this movie, but I have heard it being hyped up, especially today with all the details coming out about the Cannes premieres. So um, I'm almost certain I'm going to wait to check this out until
Yeah.
whatever 4K release comes
At
out in
this
home
point, I
video.
think that's the move. Yeah, I mean it's a tremendous. I mean Oliver Reed is like incredible in it. It's a very affecting movie, even without the sort of most outrageous scene that's been generally unavailable. It's has a lot to say and is very affecting. So yeah. What about you?
Nice.
What releases do you want to highlight this time around?
Well, we last time we recorded, we missed the Criterion announcements by a day. So the day after we recorded, Criterion finally announced, among other things, a 4K release of Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which has been rumored quite a bit since we started this show at the beginning of the year. So that was an instant pre-order for me. Um, I would have liked some more bonus features on there, but I'm sure there's going to be some great writing in the booklet, and obviously this 4K restoration is probably going to look quite good. Let's see. Then we had Vinegar Syndrome release a couple of things during their halfway to Black Friday sale, which is just one of their many sales. Yeah, the big rumored release for Vinegar Syndrome Ultra this time around ended up being Explorers, which is one of Joe Dante's films. Not one that I'm particularly interested in picking up like right now, but probably will eventually get whenever the standard edition comes out. But what I did pick up is the Blu-ray of Anything That Moves, which was a movie that came out last year, and it's shot on 16 millimeter film. It's an indie uh, comedy, I believe, which turned into like an erotic thriller giallo type thing. As far as I can tell, basically about two food delivery people whose quote unquote special services include providing erotic fulfillment to their charming and oddball customers. And it looks like they end up getting chased by a serial killer. And I had seen the trailer for this so many times. It had been served to me on Instagram just a ton, because I guess I'm an easy mark for this kind of stuff. But I'm really looking forward to checking this out because it wasn't really available easily after its theatrical release. And I like the cover art on this. And it is a Vinegar Syndrome Pictures release. So this is going to be the definitive release of this film for sure. So I'm definitely going to be checking this out.
Nice. Yeah, I noted that one. The only thing I did pick up, come back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean, the cinematograph from among those pre-order drops for this sale, because I'm worried it's gonna go before it's eligible for a sale. So that's the one I bid on.
Does that one have like a pretty large cult following? Because this is a movie I'd never heard of before. I know it's a Robert Altman film, but
so this is another one of his that I think is making the DVD to 4K leap. So I think that just really, they're collectors who are Altman heads who have been trying to get everything, and so this is like they've been waiting for years. I haven't seen it either. I've heard of it before, but and I think it, like as most of his movies do, it does have a bit of a cult following.
Yeah, I might check that out one day. Maybe I'll rent it from Scarecrow or something. And then the last thing I wanted to shout out is one that I'm personally really excited about. It's a bundle of Toxic Avenger films being put out by Refuse Films. Refuse is a UK boutique Blu-ray label, and their whole thing is boundary pushing cinema without regions. So basically all of the stuff that they put out is region free. They have a sub-label called the Trome Archive, which specializes in putting out these really decked out releases of trauma films. And this past week, they announced a bundle of Toxic Avenger films that they're calling the Mr. Melvin Toxie bundle. This is the Toxic Avenger Part 2 and Part 3 on Blu-ray, and also a third Blu-ray, which is Part 2 and 3 edited together like it was originally intended, which is a huge deal for anyone who has seen Part 2 and 3 and what a slog they are separately. So I'm really excited about this. Are these movies like definitively bad movies? Absolutely. Did I pre-order this the moment I heard about them? Yes, I did. So I will be enjoying these when they get delivered to my door. I think in August. But yeah, ever since I did my Toxic Avenger watch through last year, I've been all in on most things Troma, certainly everything Toxie. They've got a great new comic book series running monthly now. That's a lot of fun to get into.
Nice. Yeah, the first Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High are kind of the only big Troma things that I've checked out, but I definitely want to see the new one, but yeah. Glad these are getting put out.
Yeah, so far Refuse Films has put out a couple of series of Trome Archive films. They've done the original Toxic Avenger, Cannibal the Musical, Sergeant Kabuki Man, which got a 4K from Vinegar Syndrome, but this has way more features. Decapitated, Frankenhooker, Class of Nukem High, and now Toxie 2 and 3.
One last thing I wanted to note, not on the release per se, but certainly pertains to the releases that we talk about every week. Just got news today that it appears that the artist Tony Stella has passed away, and he, for my money, is sort of like the heir to Drew Struzan, I think, just in terms of like his artwork. He's done cover art for countless numbers of boutique releases in these very sort of striking painterly montage styles that are like you kind of, he's one of those guys, you know, a Tony Stella piece as soon as you see it.
Oh yeah.
And that was part of my choice to wait for the Arrow releases of the of all the Princess Films Hong Kong movies, because was doing the artwork for maybe all of those. So they're just, if you collect these things and you care about this stuff, then the artwork is part of it, and he's a big part of what makes these things feel special. So just wanted to note that, and might do something for the Instagram feed where I just kind of pull some of my favorites of his that I have and put them together to look at.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, when I heard about this, I went straight to Letterboxd and was looking at some lists that were put together of his work, just kind of visually looking through the posters. I truly did not realize how many how many posters he did, and knowing who he is now and knowing how to recognize his work, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense that was his stuff, but I didn't know before.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff on here. Well, that just about brings us to the bottom of the hour here, where it's time to dive into our feature presentation.
And now, our feature presentation.
Suzanne and Pauline, or Pum as she comes to call herself, are two young women living in 1960s Paris, navigating love, social change, and societal expectations. Agnes Varda leads us through their coming of age into adulthood as a series of men enter and exit their lives, and the two women deal with life's challenges in different ways, choosing different paths but always coming back to each other as islands of calm in the storm. The strengths of their bond as friends runs through the core of the film as Varda explores what it means to be a woman in one sings, the other doesn't.
All right. So, Jesse, this was your pick this week, and you chose this out of the Varda Criterion box set. So, what's your history with Varda, or any of these films? Have you seen much of her work? What's the story there?
The only other film of hers that I've seen, and it was only after I got this box, is Cleo from 5 to 7, which is probably, I mean, it's kind of like her top ranked film on Letterboxd, as just sort of by popularity. I think it's 385 in their top 500. And wow. But hers, so yeah, but I definitely, once I kind of got back into movies, I think it was when I watched, like, from listening to Film Spotting, the film Spotting podcast, one of the years, it was 2017. So this was kind of like back when I was getting back into movies. Her documentary Faces Places had just come out, and I think that one was nominated for an Oscar that year, and I think that was the first time I'd even remembered hearing the name Agnes Varda. I'd for sure heard of Cleo from 5 to 7 before. Didn't really know anything about it, but when Faces Places came out, that was when she as a person came onto my radar. So it is long overdue for me to dive into the box further. I need to see some of these documentaries, because this is only the second movie of hers I've seen, and she kind of, I guess, depending on who you ask, is perhaps like the documentaries are kind of where it's at, but I don't know. Between these two, I mean, Cleo from 5 to 7 might be my favorite French New Wave film. I just love that movie. I think it's incredible, and its influence on lots of movies that have come since, not just French New Wave films, is like evident. So yeah, it's been high time that I explore more, and this was kind of felt like the next big one to check off, at least from her narrative films. What about you?
Yeah, I don't own this box set. I don't think I own anything that she has done, but I have seen Cleo from 5 to 7. I watched it earlier this year because I have a couple of her films on my Criterion Challenge list for 2026. So I saw Cleo from 5 to 7, and I've also seen Le Bonheur. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
And so this Le Bonheur, I believe.
Le Bonheur.
Le Bonheur, yeah.
I've also seen Le Bonheur. So today's film makes it 3 for me this year. All first time watches. Cleo from 5 to 7. I thought it was a fantastic movie. Very documentary-like in its execution, except for a couple of key moments that are more surreal that I really enjoyed. In fact, there's a moment that has stuck with me since I've watched Cleo from 5 to 7, where Cleo is singing at the piano, and the camera kind of like swings around her, and she's like she's fading into the music and like the background is disappearing behind her, but it's only because of the way the camera is moving. And it's just this shot that is like, oh my gosh, how in the world did Varda like plan that out and capture that? Because I'm sure she had that shot like envisioned in her head, and she was able to pull it off. And that has really stuck with me since I watched that film. That was the first one of hers that I'd seen, and so I was really excited that you picked this one so that I could keep going through my Varda journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting you mentioned that shot from Cleo to from 5 to 7, because like the some of the, I mean, I didn't really know going into this one. I guess maybe I should have guessed because it's in the title. One sings, the other doesn't. But just how much music is in this movie. It's almost, I mean, you could almost make the case of it being a musical, especially in the back
Hmm.
half when Pum joins the Orchids. Or is that what that was the name of the band? The sort of
Yes,
like
her like traveling troupe.
lady power folk band that she puts together.
Yeah.
Badass ladies going around in a bus. Love it. But yeah, and the some of the musical moments in this one, I mean, there's like this almost magical realist musical number about abortion that takes place in part on this boat that's going down. I
Hmm.
believe, I assume it's the Seine, maybe the Seine in Paris. That was just like shot and presented in a very interesting way. But she was she's a photographer by training. Like that was kind of like she got her start as a photographer. So it totally makes sense that she would be the way that she would stage these things would be so considered. Though in some ways it wasn't, because I did watch one of the features on the disc, which we can talk about later, and it was interesting to hear her approach to shooting things. But we can get
Yeah.
into that when we talk about features later. But what did you think about the sort of structure of like following these two women's stories over, it was like a 15-year period or something like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because there is a time jump in this film, so it's not like we're getting to see several different stages in these women's lives. It's we're seeing, you know, early on their first meeting, and then kind of after some traumatic things happen, we jump to, I think it's like 10 years in the future, and kind of catching up with them to see where they're at. For me, I don't think the structure of the movie worked as well as I wanted it to. And again, that's just for me because I was having trouble believing their bond between the two of them, between
Mm.
Suzanne and Pauline or Palm. And maybe that's because I didn't see enough of them like interacting, or if it was something more to do with like just having not being able to fill that gap in time, so it didn't make sense to me why they kept coming back to each other. I don't know. I want to talk it out with you though, because and I want to know what you thought about it as well, because as I was watching this I was like, I don't know if I'm being charitable enough and giving this, the attention it needs, while also like still wanting to notice like all the cool cinematography and the neat costumes and like getting into the music and things like that, which I think is all done really well. But I'm not quite sure how well the character stuff and the time jumps and all of that landed for me, at least after this first watch. What about you?
Well, I bought the friendship. Like at no point did I have trouble imagining how the two of them would kind of keep coming back, because it's interesting because it's sort of not just, I think it's key for me that you not only get these moments when they come back together in person at times, but it's almost like there's a fair amount of voiceover narration, both from Varda as the sort of like omniscient narrator, but also almost like an epistolary structure where you can see that they're sending letters to each other. So even if we don't get those connection points in person, you can it to me it seems like they're always writing each other, and keeping up in that way, which as as 21st century people, it can be easy to forget just how common that was and how important those types of bonds people had. But I think the sort of the inciting incident of their friendship, like just I don't know, if someone helped you pay for an abortion that you couldn't afford, that's pretty huge. Like they would be that would be someone who you would appreciate and sort of feel seen by. So I bought it. I bought it. And then, the stuff that happened with witnessing her, Suzanne's partner, or her lover's suicide, the father of her children, like another
Yeah.
horrible thing that they sort of kind of went through as for Pum, I mean, as a child still, basically. So yeah, and also the fact that she was photographed by him. That was another sort of common thing they
Hmm.
had. That's sort of, so like, yeah, it was, anyway, so all that to say, I bought the friendship, and I just thought it was kind of beautifully portrayed. And even though they were two kind of very different people who had different ways of moving through the world, like one
Hmm.
sort of, being, because of her situation, like kind of feeling like I have two kids, I need to find a way to feed them. So she kind of
Hmm.
like, Suzanne taking the more sort of kind of a more traditional route, while Pum goes off on her sort of musical adventures. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting sort of way to look at the many ways that women make it work in a time when
Mm.
it's never easy. It never has been easy. It's not easy now. But yeah, 1960s and 70s France. It was kind of funny because it made me think of, like, I think Kramer versus Kramer comes out, I think just a year or two after this. Have you seen Kramer versus Kramer?
I haven't. It's a big
Oh,
blind spot
okay.
for me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't really spoil it because it's kind of the whole premise of the movie. Meryl Streep kind of leaves Dustin Hoffman with their kid at the beginning of the film, and it's kind of the whole film is about that. And it was kind of funny to see how that movie is in its way a freak out about that kind of a situation.
Hmm.
It's handled a little more delicately than that, but in this movie, Pum basically decides, I'm gonna have another child, and my first child's just gonna be with his Iranian father, and I'm not really gonna be in his life. And it's just like, yep, that's just something that they've decided will work, and it was kind of remarkable. How did you
Yeah.
feel about? What did you make of that whole thread? Because I've read some letterbox reviews where people clearly kind of had problems with it, because it's a kind of a shocking decision.
Yeah, it's strange. Just a really strange choice that I have no clue what it's supposed to mean. I guess I don't know. Maybe I haven't thought about it enough. It was one of the things that didn't work for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they're real, because I don't think that, like, her leaving with the kid would not have worked for him. Like he like him coming from a kind of a traditional society, a traditional background, and the sort of the expectations in Iran, like, there's no, I don't know that she could have left with the kids. So it seemed like sort of the compromise position. And it's not like she abandoned it, like, because we do learn later that she's sort of like, they still, they
Hmm.
visit. She's not completely absent from his life.
Yeah,
So it's at the
maybe.
very least a non-traditional arrangement for sure.
Yeah, maybe what threw me off was just like the way they decided on it, because that conversation was 5 seconds long and there
Oh
was
yeah,
very
yeah,
little emotion, and it was just I guess it's an example of this kind of like documentary type approach that Varda uses throughout the film, where a lot of the things that happen are very matter of fact and we don't dwell on them for very long, but they have major ramifications. So I don't know. Maybe my whole thing with this is that like I kind of wanted to see some ramifications. There is some of that, like after the time jump, we kind of get to see a little bit of like Suzanne having to live with her parents for a little bit. We don't really see much of what Poem's life was like in the 10 years since, other than, obviously she's still been touring. We get some great musical numbers with them, and they're very theatrical and some really awesome costuming, which I want to talk about. But yeah, maybe it's the documentary approach to this subject matter and these characters that was not clicking for me. The more I'm talking it out, the more I'm like, I think that's it.
yeah. Well, I guess it seemed also that the key relationship of the film is the one that they have with each other. Like, we see as much as we need to see of Pum's relationship with her Iranian husband as we need to understand kind of why she makes the choices that she makes. But as a kind of as a film about women supporting each other, like that's kind of like the big thing, because it's sort of like the found family that they sort of have together. Like that's what we end on at the end. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, to me, I just love that whole sequence of them at this house that they rented somewhere in the countryside together with their families
Yeah.
coming together. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Like I want to kind of luxuriate in this place. And that was actually what most of the documentary that was on the disc that I watched, like, focused mostly on. This documentarian was with Varda for, I believe it might have been the last day of shooting where they shot that sequence, and she just got to kind of kind of sit there and watch the way that she worked for the day, and sort of they got some interviews with Varda about her approach and how why she does things the way that she does. And it was just cool to see, I mean, all these actual musicians that they had who were just kind of like, noodling around on guitars and stuff. And it seemed like they must have shot a lot more than they used to sort of get what they got, to just make it feel like this very naturalistic, like, people enjoying each other on a day in the country with music and food. So I sort of wonder how much of the rest of the movie was shot in that way, because she said that she tended not to go in with a shot list. Like she just kind of wanted to see what the light was doing in the scene and on the day. Like, again, sort of like as coming from the background as a photographer. So I sort of wonder how much extra stuff there was for this movie and really any of her movies. Maybe less so for Cleo because of how it was like her going from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
But this, since it's really a lot of scenes of like just points in time, like who knows how many arguments they shot between Pum and her husband, as that situation was starting to kind of deteriorate.
Yeah, I don't know. You make a good point, though. That final scene is so gorgeous, and the colors are unreal. There are like crazy greens in this that you can only like. You wish every movie today had colors like this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what stood out to me the most. I was watching the whole time. Like what you were saying about her, looking to see what the light was doing. She clearly made the right choices on the day to get those shots because they look astounding. So good.
Yeah, and I didn't take too many notes when I was watching this, partly because of the, it was subtitled and I kind of just didn't want to have to keep pausing to go back and see what I missed. But an early one that I felt like really just encapsulated the relationship between Pum and Suzanne was, I forget which one of them. I think it was Suzanne said, like, with her it's like love but without the headaches. And like, and that just like, yeah, that's it. That's what this is, and that's why it's so comforting. And just none of the men, even the seemingly more well-meaning ones, like the photographer in the beginning, even though he's kind of like, presumably a pretty lefty artist guy, he still doesn't really, he like kind of says how he tells Pum not to smile, like, oh, you shouldn't smile when you take my pictures, like it didn't look natural or whatever. He said, like, he was still kind of, all the men are really kind of imposing their vision of how they think women should be. And like, yeah, I just dug their relationship. It was like a place that like had none of those sort of expectations, and they were just sort of free to be themselves in their own version of womanhood.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see kind of as the story goes along, as they enter the kind of later stages of the movie at this 10 years later point, they're having to make decisions about like what kind of person they want to be moving forward. So that's why, Pum doesn't end up staying in Iran, and Suzanne doesn't end up staying with the sailor that she is with for a little bit. So, Pum is looking for more freedom. Suzanne is looking for a more committed relationship, and they're over the course of the movie, they're figuring out these are the things that they want, and they end up getting them by the end of the film. Suzanne, ends up with this doctor who seems to be what she wants in a relationship, much different than what Jerome was like at the beginning of the film. And yeah, Pum has her second child. I wanted to talk about Jerome a little bit because you're right. He seems to be this pretty, artistic fellow. Seems surprisingly chill about the abortion at first, because it kind of happens where, Suzanne and Pum are talking about it, and then I think Suzanne and Jerome have a conversation about it, and he doesn't seem like too perturbed about it, but he doesn't seem perturbed about much, and he doesn't seem to be able to do much with the family. I think the quote that Suzanne gives is like, he can't do anything for the kids except love them or whatever, which means he's basically, like useless the rest of the time because she's the one having to take care of them all. And then he ends up taking his life, and Poem is the one to discover him.
Tragic in his way, ineffectual also, but an interesting counterpoint to like Pum's father, I thought, in the beginning, like, of kind of they're both of them are living. I mean, Suzanne's not living with Jerome. She kind of would, maybe she would like to, but she can't because of his, he's married. But the sort of central men in their lives are both kind of like, to me, representative of just the like too strange a thought. One being like very sort of rigid and traditional, and the other one kind of being more libertine, but like there isn't really, neither of those ways forward are a way forward for these women. Like they're so that was kind of what I made of him, as just like, yeah, he's like he's not gonna work. He's not gonna work for Suzanne, kind of in a different yet similar way, that like either staying with her father or finding someone who's like her father would work for Pum. So that's kind of like the inciting, kind of what sets them each off on the journey that they go through this film, is like the way society is set up, and even the way the counterculture is set up. Like neither of these are good. We got to kind of make our own way.
Yeah, and then from there, Poem ends up joining, the traveling troupe, and this is where we get several musical numbers, which I was not expecting, but it was really pleasantly surprised at how they're staged. The lyrics, if you pay attention to them in the subtitles, are they do typically align with kind of where the narrative is, such as it is. But what really struck me is the costuming across these musical numbers. It's very unique, and I had written down a couple. In one of them, Palm is wearing a what looks to be a boob shirt, which is just a crazy choice.
Was that like they're filming a music video? It was almost like they're filming a music video, and she was wearing that, right? It was like, or like a film, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was this green work suit that she was wearing once with a blue swan cardigan, and I was like, who came up with this outfit? It's very striking, but also great use of color again. These musical numbers are very theatrical. A lot of them are, if we're looking at the band performing, whether it's in like a town square or they're on stage at some kind of community center, that kind of thing, but they're very out there in their production style, and I really enjoyed watching them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen obviously anything between this and Cleo from 5 to 7, but I'm curious to see what role music plays in her other movies. But I guess, presumably she was hanging out on Jacques Demy's sets, so she probably maybe picked up some things about what to do with music and how to stage it in a way that was visually interesting. Because I mean, look no further than those films. Another thing I noted was like this yet again. I think I noted this from Cleo, but this yet again, like if you love Wes Anderson's aesthetic and you have not seen any Agnes Varda films, you got to check it out, because this is absolutely one of his inspiration points, just with some of the collages of the postcards and stuff, and the way some of the things are framed, like felt right out of the Anderson playbook for sure.
Oh yeah, there's a moment where the narrator says that Poem felt like she became a character in a short film, and then it flashes to a title card, and that feels very Andersonian as well. So
yes,
I can see where he got stuff like that too. Did you have anything else specifically you wanted to talk about for this one?
No, I mean, I think that those are all my big points. But just again, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this. I loved the central performances, and Agnes Varda being out to support women in the many ways that they find to make it in the world. Because there's no one way. There's no easy way. And I just thought that this was a kind of a pretty beautiful portrait of a friendship and interesting way to approach feminism in a less, I don't want to say a less militant way, but in a way perhaps, because again, Suzanne does sort of end up in a kind of a traditional relationship by the end. And it's just not, there's just kind of no judgment presented about that. It's like, she's found a way to make it work, and that's kind of all that matters. And she's got her friends there to support her for, who knows if that relationship will last, because they're both still fairly young. Who's to say what's going to happen in the next 15 years? But you get the sense that at the very least they have each other to fall back on, if nothing else. And so you kind of leave feeling like it feels good. This feels good, and we know that they're going to be okay. Especially since the Iranian Revolution is happening in a year or two, so who knows what's going to happen with Pum's husband and son, ex-husband.
Yeah, maybe in the sequel they deal with that. Oh my God. Two sing, the others don't. Yeah, I had some issues with this movie, mostly structurally and maybe plot-wise, but I think there's a lot to like here. And I do want to see what you saw in some of the bonus features and stuff too, what you haven't mentioned so far. Did we talk about No, yes, we did. About the abortion song on the boat. I think you mentioned it briefly.
Just that it was like, it almost felt, because it was sort of like a montage also, like the song was being sung in a few different places. But yeah, that sort of struck to me as a bit of a moment of not that there was lots of this necessarily in the movie, but a moment of magical realism. Because some of the songs are more like you're obviously viewing a performance. But this kind of felt very, more like something from a musical, I guess I would say, rather than just a performance from the band.
Yeah, the song on the boat I think is the strongest part of the film for me, because it, like you said, it feels more like a moment where we're leaving the reality of the film for a minute to have this song kind of being sung on the river, and then intercut with this trip to go have abortions done. And it kind of, seeing that sequence, kind of how long that sequence is, it kind of brings to mind, like, how difficult this was at the time, how like mentally taxing it must be to, sit there and be like, okay, this is where I'm going, and I have to get this abortion done, but it's so far away, and it's that kind of like what must have been going through their minds on this really long journey. And so those kind of thoughts and feelings were really brought to the forefront during that song, and it was really powerful. And I think that's my favorite part of this movie. So I wanted to make sure we got to talk about that a little bit.
For sure. And I should say also, we didn't really talk too much about Suzanne's path. Even if she kind of ends up in a more traditional place by the end, she, opens up a family planning clinic to kind of continue the work. If Pum is sort of out there fighting the artist's fight, kind of to get, about female empowerment and feminism, she's like, Suzanne is there giving people tools to kind of get the care they need. And just really, really cool to see the long legacy going back that women have of leading the way and making kind of building the reality that they need, because men aren't going to do it for them. So good to point that out for sure.
That's a great way to put it. This one for me comes in third, I think, of the narrative films of hers that I've seen so far, below Le Bonheur and Cleo from 5 to 7. But by no stretch of the imagination does that mean that this is not worth checking out. So,
yeah, well, definitely keeper for me. Obviously, it's in the set. I got to keep it. But no, I really liked it. And the set itself, I should say, this is, one of those really blockbuster Criterion releases. This is truly like the complete. It might not have all of her. I'm sure there are lots of shorts that she directed that might not be in here, but it certainly has all the features or anything that approaches a feature length. On the disc itself, there was only one feature that kind of really pertained to this film, and it's the one that I described. It was a documentary, and it was called Women Are Naturally Creative, Agnes Varda. And it is just under an hour long, but it is mostly just following her around on the last day of shooting. But you get to see, like, her daughter was on set. Her daughter plays she was the older version of, I believe, Suzanne's daughter.
Yes.
And then her son is also in the movie, playing Zorro, the young Zorro, which was the sort of
Oh,
young, yeah. So she had both their kids in the movie. So it's just like,
that's
so
so
cool.
cool.
But yeah, that was cool to just to watch her move around set, see how she did things. Definitely some good quotes from her. I mean, it sounded like she was already like almost 20 years into her career as a filmmaker, so already kind of like a legend. So just to hear, especially the two leads whose names we should actually say here, Therese Leotard and Valerie Mares as Suzanne and Pauline. Just the fact that they're like, we get to make a movie with Agnes Varda. This is incredible. Like to be like with this woman who is making her own way. It sounds like she basically had to produce this movie on her own. She was also a producer and had to get the funding. Like, had to go to the people that she knew to get it funded, because it was like she wanted to make this sort of like feminist road movie about two women, and it's like, who's gonna even, and then she was like, who's gonna pay for that? I had to do everything to make this movie. And she's like, that's the part of the movie making that I don't like. I want to be here on the set with these people making these, getting to make these choices about how we're going to shoot this thing. So yeah, definitely worth watching. That's the kind of stuff that you want to see, because you can't, it's nice to hear people's recollections, but to see what was happening on the set is really cool. So even though there wasn't much on the disc, this is like, if you're going to have just one feature, this is the one you want. And just also, there's a huge, I'm holding it. There's this thick, the set comes with this 200-page book that just has essays and things about the films. I read the essay, but that was like behind the pod here a couple weeks ago. It was a good essay, but it's just interesting to note, sort of like how they did with the big Bergman box set. Rather than present the films chronologically, they've sort of built a program for you to, like, the sort of the first disc it's sort of curated in a way in how they present it. It's not just like, it's almost like kind of a thematic, like, here's some of her movies that she made when she was in California. Here's the ones that are more like Paris pictures. Here's some documentaries. So it's cool to see it presented almost like you would in a museum or something like that. And so I kind of like it when Criterion does things like that with the box sets, which they've done with some of these director boxes, which they're still doing them, but I feel like it's been a minute since we had a real blockbuster one. So I'm hoping there's some more coming. I guess there's the Anderson one, but in a way I don't own that one, and I don't think I will, because of how many double dips there would be for me in that.
Yeah.
That one sort of looked like, they've already put out all of his movies basically, except for whatever the most recent one in that box. But it kind of felt like they were
my
just
beloved
collating.
Asteroid City.
There you go.
Sorry.
Which no, that's totally no. I do want to. That is one of my favorites of his more recent ones. But it kind of, I don't know. The box itself looks gorgeous, but I don't know how much curation value add there is if you've already have his other movies. But glad they're still putting out these director boxes. So highly recommend checking it out, just to have everything, like the definitive collection of an artist like hers works put together is really great.
Yeah, love it.
So that wraps up our discussion of One Sings, the Other Doesn't. And this is normally where we would read letters from friends, but we don't have any of those this week. If you would like to get in on the conversation, you can reach out to us with a letter, thoughts about recent releases, questions about physical media collection, anything goes really, and you can get to us at blindbuyspod@gmail.com. The only thing left is for Josh to tell us what we are watching for our next episode. What do you got, Josh?
All right. Well, I wanted to stick with the theme of having a woman director on the show again after having Varda this past week. And I wanted to break into a different label as well that we haven't covered so far. So this one comes to us from Kino Lorber. It's under their Studio Classics label, directed by Susan Seidelman. It's 1985's Desperately Seeking Susan. It's starring Rosanna Arquette, Aidan Quinn, and Madonna. This is a blind spot for me, but I did pick this up during the most recent Kino Lorber sale. And I feel like I've heard plays on the title Desperately Seeking Susan for my entire life. So I'm finally going to check this out and see what it's all about.
Excellent. No, I almost watched. I had it in the player or queued up from a streamer a couple months ago, and it was one of those ones I started just too late. I made it 10 minutes in and fell asleep, but I've been wanting to read. Hey man, this is just what happens to me. This is what happens to me with my life.
Oh, it's happening to me too.
Yep.
Truly.
So yeah, I'm excited to have an excuse to go back. I think Madonna is unfairly maligned for much of her cinematic work, so I'm excited to see some more of it. And of course, I mean, Rosanna Arquette is one of my ride or dies, so I'm excited to break into this one. Great pick.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. You heard it here first, folks. Our pick for next week is Desperately Seeking Susan. Like Jesse mentioned, you can reach out to us at blindbuyspod@gmail.com if you have any thoughts about that film, this week's film, or anything else. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.